Voters, D.C. We hope this evening provides an opportunity for district voters to hear the candidates' priorities and issues of importance in the upcoming election on November 8th. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce your moderator for the evening. An award-winning investigative reporter, NPR correspondent, and senior editor, as well as associate professor of media and public affairs here at the George Washington University, Cheryl W. Thompson is a journalist with nearly 30 years of experience. In addition to her positions at NPR and the George Washington University, Ms. Thompson serves as the chairman and immediate past president for the Investigative Reporters and Editors, a 6,000-member organization that's dedicated to improving investigative journalism. She was the first Black woman to lead this organization in its 43-year history when she was elected in 2018, and the only president to serve for 3 terms. She is also the vice president of the Fund for Investigative Journalism, a national non-for-profit that provides grants and other support to independent journalists and news organizations. Ms. Thompson is a founding board member of the Center of Collaborative Investigative Journalism, which focuses on global investigations, mainly on the African continent. She is also a member of the National Association of Black Journalists, where she was named 2017 National Association of Black Journalists Educator of the Year. And she started a student chapter here at the George Washington University in 2014. Needless to say, Ms. Thompson is an accomplished reporter, having won more than 36 awards. These include an Emmy, 3 Salute to Excellence Awards from the National Association of Black Journalists, 2 National Headliner Awards, including one that was actually just announced on Wednesday. The Freedom of Information Medal and 2 other awards from Investigative Reports and Editors. And here at the George Washington University, that won 2 Pulitzer Prizes for national reporting.
Ski-weight, anybody? There's always one. So welcome everybody. Thanks for coming out. It's actually good to be out, right? It's good to be out. I want to take a minute and explain tonight's format for those of you who may not know. The candidates will come on stage one at a time, and each candidate will have 2 minutes to give their opening statement, followed by 15 minutes of questions and answers. The order in which the candidates speak was randomly generated backstage prior to the start of the forum, just to make sure there were no shenanigans and people didn't get their feelings hurt. And questions were solicited from you guys, right, for this forum. So, and I have asked the candidates to please refrain from personal attacks or charges. We don't want anyone coming up on stage getting slapped. So, you know, we've asked them not to do that. So we want to keep the discussion focused on relevant topics. So this event, by the way, is being live streamed, just so you know. It's being live streamed and will be made available later to residents of the DC jail. And use of recording devices is prohibited, and please no flash photography in the auditorium, but you're welcome to do it out in the hall. So we have 4 candidates here, maybe 5, we'll see what happens, or 5, maybe 6. But so with that, let's get this started. Bringing out the first candidate, and the lucky or not so lucky, first candidate, is James Butler. And James is a former ANC commissioner. We gotta get the greeting right. Bam. Okay. Is a former ANC commissioner and who handles civil complaints before the EEOC and the DC Office of Human Rights. So,
thank you, Cheryl. Thanks for having me. And I want to thank you all for coming tonight. I want to thank the League of Women's Voters for putting this on. And most importantly, I want to thank the George Washington University. Let's give it up for the George Washington University. And Cheryl, I'd be remiss if I didn't thank you for having me tonight and all that you do and these organizations do to further the ends of democracy. As was mentioned, my name is James Butler, and I'm running to be DC's next mayor. I am an absolutely proud Washingtonian. I am child number 6 of 7 kids to the late Reverend Harris Franklin Butler and Grace Butler. Folks, I learned how to fight early on. I have a Bachelor's of Science from Kent State University, as well as my Juris Doctorate from The Ohio State University. As a former civil rights lawyer, folks, I've taken on municipalities, city governments, state governments, and I have fought my entire adult life for fairness and equality. Right now, we have issues in this city that I believe you all can attest to that are not fair and that are not equal. And I will fight for justice and fairness and equality until the day I die. It is important that we have equality and justice and fairness in our city because we know DC is one of the first major black cities in the country. But we're seeing black people predominantly get moved out of this city. We need a mayor that will not only tackle these issues, but a mayor that will focus on the city as a whole. My time is up, but I'll share more with you.
well, let me just say this, that you have scored a point because you can tell time. So you kept it to 2 minutes because there's somebody back there waiting to give you the hook if you go over.
First priority as mayor of this, one of the safest cities in America. Yes, you've heard it right. I will absolutely make DC one of the safest cities in America. When I answer any questions, and I want you all to know, I have made a pact with the public that I will not equivocate. I will always give you my plan in clear, concise statements and tell you how I will accomplish it. I will never give you platitudes whatsoever. We will increase, one, we're going to work both ends. We're going to deal with the root of the problem because we know that our youth, they are getting in lots of problems that we haven't seen, unprecedented issues. We will ensure that the Marion Barry Summer Youth Program is a year-round program. Common sense approaches where we're paying them a minimum wage. They get work-study credit for those things. That our rec centers are operating 24 hours a day and our safe passages for not only boys and girls, but for single parents that may be having mental, behavioral health, economic issues. We need to stop or start operating like a world-class city. Right now, we are operating like we're not trying to pursue statehood. We need to start operating like we're a state. We really do. And what I will absolutely do is ensure that we tackle that end. On the other end of the spectrum, I will work to get people home alive. A defining moment in this, my political endeavors was this, when I had the unfortunate obligation to go and see a 10-year-old be buried, and a 6-year-old be buried that were killed by errant bullets. I will tell you, it fundamentally changed my life. In looking at running governments, I, as a mayor, need to ensure that I take care of the root of the problem, but at the same time, get my folks home alive in the city. And by doing this, D.C. Is at a 20-year high for gun violence. If we give the present mayor 4 more years, we don't know if it will be at a 30-year high. Both of my opponents, our defund the police, have moved to strip public safety budgets. Folks, and they're all career politicians. It's time we get someone in with the plan. My plan is to bring an additional 700 police on our streets, well-trained, community-based police officers. We will get from our cadet program, we will make sure they're recruited from our high schools, and we will have community-based police officers. We don't need to get them from out west or down south when we got proper talent right in our own communities. We will formulate an inter-gun recovery unit, an interdiction unit to seize illegal guns from Maryland and Virginia and any other jurisdiction that someone would want to do us harm. We will also, in addition to that, partner with our federal and our state partners to ensure that ghost guns are a thing of the past. In addition, we will partner with our federal and consult with our federal and our state courts to ensure that we tackle our loitering issue in a restorative and constitutional way. That looks like a task force that will not have arresting powers, but go to these predominantly black men that we see around the city and ask them, hey, what do you need? How can we help you? Is it an overcrowded home? Is it a drug addiction issue? Is it mental behavioral health? Is it, job issues? And we'll give them what they need. That's what this is the type of compassion that we have to have with the city with this much money. But you ask yourself, and I see some strange looks out there when people say you're tackling the loitering issue. Do we let black men stay on the street loitering for the next 50 years? I'm a black man, and it does bother me, and it doesn't make me proud. And I do know that ghost guns, and I do know that all kinds of violence erupts from this loitering. So it's time that someone stands up and tackle this major issue. But you know what? Career politicians won't see that, because they are stifled by the vision of saying no. They learn how to say no. We need to clean house and get someone with a fresh vision of what this city can be, not what it can't be.
Okay, so tell me what your community policing plan is.
My community policing plan, in case I wasn't clear, is recruiting from the high schools to ensure that we have, one, police officers that are from our high school. We will have beat police officers with our additional 700 police officers. We can't have that right now because we have an overburdened police force that's worked doing overtime to the equivalent of 1.1 million hours a year. That equates to hiring literally 500 additional police officers. And we would have less overburdened police officers, less mental behavioral health issues. They'd be healthier. And you know what? Our response time would be a lot quicker. So with these additional 700 police officers, we will have them walking beats in the streets in problem areas. We will also, in addition, have our task force to tackle the loitering issues in the city. Yes, I am a tough on violent crime, will be a tough on violent crime mayor. I've been quoted as that. I've been ostracized for that. But yes, I will be tough on violent crime. You know how and why? Because I know in this city in particular, when someone commits a violent crime, on the other end of that bullet is a black victim. Oh, I see you shaking your head. You're right. You're absolutely right. Think about it. Someone's got to tackle this hard stuff. Career politicians don't look at it this way.
So you mentioned that part of your plan is to seize illegal guns, but I mean, the district has been doing that for years, right?
Sure.
Everybody knows illegal guns are a problem. Last year, police recovered more than 2,000 of them in D.C., right? Far greater than the number confiscated in 2020. And countless more are out there, right? There are countless more out there. Virginia is a source of many of those guns that are on D.C. streets because their laws are just so much, they're so different from D.C. But this is a problem, again, that has plagued this city for years, despite authorities offering incentives to people who will lead them to these illegal firearms. So if you're elected mayor, what will you do to help rid the streets of illegal guns? And how plausible is that it can be done?
Well, the reality is it has worked before when we had the gun recovery unit. Now, the gun recovery unit did get into some corruption and those sorts of things. I understand that.
Corruption.
But we're going
I'm from Chicago.
we're going to bring it back. We're going to bring it back in an appropriate way with the appropriate oversight to keep people alive in this city. When we double the size of the gun recovery unit with our new interdiction unit, it will have no less than 100 officers that are specifically charged with interdicting illegal weapons in this city. People didn't like it before, but the reality is people don't like dying either. You can't have it both ways. We got to get people home alive. We got to get our babies home alive, our grandparents. For the first time in this city in 20 years, I pumped my gas standing at the back of my car, expecting that someone's going to carjack me. Why? Because several of my neighbors have been carjacked. You know, we're going to seize these illegal guns that's why we need the additional police officers, so that we can get this gun recovery unit specifically charged with seizing these illegal guns. And we'll also double up with our federal partners, the ATF and other federal partners, to ensure that we work with them in a robust way in seizing these illegal guns. But it requires us not to have an overburdened police force, but a police force that is strong, that is not overburdened with the resources that they need. And we've got to do that. Right now, we have 2 council members that are running for mayor. They don't want to do that. And we have a mayor that's shown she can't do it over the course of 8 years.
No attacks.
We've got to clean house. We've got to clean house. I'm not attacking when the numbers speak for themselves. When we're at a 20-year high, we have shown that the mayor cannot do it.
So how many illegal guns are on the streets of D.C.?
You want to count?
You want to tell me?
You want to go for an expedition? I don't know. I'm sure they're moving. We've got a porous borders.
How many do you think are on the streets? I mean,
too many. Too many. I think it's too many, and I think we need a mayor that's going to tackle all the illegal guns in the city.
So how do you go about getting them off the street if you don't know how many are on the street?
By the interdiction unit. It's the interdiction unit. Because this interdiction unit seizes information where criminal activity may or might be afoot. They use informants, they use operatives. That's how they did it before. So we can say, how do you do it? But we know we can't do it if the police officers aren't out there. But what we do know is police work, use some informants like they've used historically, will get the numbers down. But I don't think no one needs a hard number, because a ghost gun is probably being made right now while I'm speaking. So who would give hard numbers? I'm not being disrespectful to you, Cheryl, but I mean...
I can handle it.
I know you can. And I'm really enjoying this interview, too. But to ask me hard numbers is a bit unfair, I think.
Okay. So let's move on to education. Let's turn to education.
Sure.
Low student performance continues to be an issue for the district. What three things would you do as mayor to improve the city's schools?
One, I think we need to retain some of the best talent in the country. Right now, we're not able to do that. We need to ensure that our teachers for retention are being paid a minimum wage that is competitive throughout the country, a salary that is competitive throughout the country. We also need for those teachers workforce housing to ensure that they can not only live in our city, but stay in our city. I also believe that we should, instead of recruiting from Teach for America so frequently, and we're bringing teachers in from all over the country that may not be vested in our community, I think we really do need to bring back the Teachers College to ensure that our teachers are more committed to our community. And that way we can get them working in high school, shadowing in a high school, and ultimately teaching in that same high school. In addition to that, I believe that we, instead of using the per pupil, well, we can continue to use the per pupil formula, but what we must do is see the areas where our schools are underperforming budget-wise and not getting the funds that they need while using the per pupil formula. So we know that schools predominantly east of the river are underperforming. What we can do and will do as mayor is we will then earmark some of those funds and give it a greater infusion of cash to those schools that are underperforming east of the river.
But doesn't that require approval by the city council?
It does, and that's what we will do. We will work with the city council to ensure that there's additional funding in that regard.
And if they say no?
If they say no, we will try it again, just as every mayor has to do. But that's, so you asked me what we pursue, and we will also probably in that situation, since you're giving me a scenario, have to work to shave another area of the budget. Or,
Policing?
I'm sorry?
From police?
I see you're not liking my policing plan too much. Folks, I will make DC one of the safest cities in America. Okay? Okay? Let the record be clear. We need a mayor that's going to keep you alive. Yeah.
God, if mayors could keep people alive.
No. But mayors can ensure that you have a safe city so that you stay alive.
So
that was a fake laugh. I'm sorry. I won't do that again.
It's your time.
Cheryl, thank you.
Yeah. So when you ran for mayor 4 years ago, you finished second in the primary behind,
That's correct.
With about 10% of the vote. And at the time, you said that if you became mayor, you would turn over control of the DC schools to an independent body. Why?
I have evolved in that position, and I've changed. I don't believe we need to tear the full thing down at this point. So my position has certainly evolved in that regard. I believe we can make it better. I believe we can improve on things, but I don't believe at this point that we need to tear it down. So I am no longer moving for divestiture of mayoral control of our schools.
Okay. So I know you know this question was coming because I'm sure you've been asked it before.
Sure.
You're the former owner of a law practice.
I am.
And you were disbarred in 2009 after scores of complaints of fraud and malpractice that led to a payout of more than $650,000 to former clients. Why should voters trust that someone who broke the law will now uphold it?
So let me be clear about this. This was one of the toughest times of my life. I started this law practice when I was 27 years old. I'm sitting here right now, I'll be 47 this year, okay? I did not break any laws. That's a complete misstatement that I broke a law. I was never charged. There was no discussion of charging me. As a matter of fact, the first thing, and you all can look this up, that was recommended that I surrendered my license for 1 year. So it's suspension. So let's be clear when there are assertions of fact that are that important.
So you were disbarred?
No. So I'm going to answer your question.
Oh.
You've asked the question. I'd like to.
I just wanted to make sure I didn't miss something because you said suspended, and there's a difference.
So there's a clear difference. The first recommendation by Bar Council was that I had a 1 year suspension. And that was what Bar Council agreed to. Ultimately, the board denied the 1 year suspension, and I voluntarily surrendered my license. I consented and gave up my license. So I want to be clear on this. Why? Because I knew I was running a national practice. I had 25 full-time staff. I created jobs. I helped thousands of people all over the country. But I also realized I failed a block of my clients that were primarily returning citizens. And I failed them. And I've learned a lot from that. I didn't run from this problem. I've stayed in the community. I've stayed vested in the community. I've given so much back to this community, and I continue to give back to the community. I continue around the country to work on civil rights cases. But you know what? America's about second chances. It's about people making mistakes. Yeah, you know what? I was operating at a very high level. How many black men at 27 years old are the managing partner of a law firm with 25 full-time staff traveling around the country helping a lot of people? Not many. And I made some mistakes while I did it. But you know what? I didn't let that stop me. I didn't let that be the end game. I didn't leave town. I kept my head up after a while of licking my wounds, and I continue to help people, and I still do that today. I fight for fairness and equality for the Office of Human Rights, before the EEOC. I've been an ANC commissioner. I've volunteered for every philanthropic and volunteer organization in DC relating to hunger, food shortage in the entire city.
Okay,
I'm still committed to that, and I'm still committed to you.
Thank you. I'm sorry our time is up, but thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Well, next is at-large council member, because we have two tonight, Robert White Jr. And your fan club.
Yes, indeed.
Thank you. I'll let you give your opening statement.
I appreciate it. Well, first and foremost, I want to thank GW and the League of Women Voters for having us. Thank you, Sheriff, for moderating. I'm Robert White. I'm a fifth-generation Washingtonian. I'm a father, a husband, and an at-large council member. My life has been defined by overcoming obstacles. Like so many native Washingtonians, I grew up in a city that was difficult. And I watched my family struggle for decades just trying to get footing in this city that we love. My life took a very difficult and pivotal turn when I was young. At 8 years old, I lost my mom to breast cancer, and less than a month later, I was in a near-fatal car accident. As I spent time in the hospital recovering, I fell so far behind in school that I failed every single grade from 3rd grade to 10th grade. This was a time in my life when I needed people to encourage me and believe in me, but most people counted me out. They determined that I was a troublemaker and treated me like that. But 10 years after my high school guidance counselor told me that I would never go to college, I was a lawyer sitting next to Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton on Capitol Hill fighting for DC residents. I've learned how to become a problem solver. To go from where I was to where I am now, I've had to learn how to make plans and execute those plans. And those are the skills that I have brought for the past 15 years to deliver for the resident District of Columbia. When I ran for the council, I told people I would focus on 4: affordable education equity, jobs, and returning citizens. And I've delivered on those promises. I've passed the most progressive early childhood education bill in the country. I've delivered on housing, on jobs, and for returning citizens. I see that my time is up, so let me get ready for these questions.
Well, unless you were disbarred, it's going to be a little easier. So I'm just saying.
I'm a lawyer in good standing.
No, that's a fact. So last week, you made a blockbuster announcement. You promised every DC resident a job if you become mayor.
Yes.
That would be about 10,000 people at a cost of $1.5 billion. Now, you know, journalists aren't good at math, so it could be a little off. But it would beef up the city staff by about a third, if I'm correct. That's a gutsy promise to make, right? It's gutsy. One that people will remember if it happens, and particularly if it doesn't. So tell us about the specifics of that plan.
Here are the specifics. I believe in accountability. I also believe that we need a mayor who is visionary. This is a unique and important time in our city. We have more money than we have ever had in the history of our city, and we have a city of people who want us to lean in and solve problems. Now, if we want to reduce crime, the best path is getting people employed. If we want people in housing, the best path is getting people employed. We have a crisis on our hands, a climate crisis. So there is no doubt that our government, like governments across the country, over the next decade, are going to have to expand what we do to address the looming climate crisis. And so we're forward thinking on this. But we also know that our budget has grown by an average of $1.2 billion a year. So when we're looking at what we're going to do with next year's budget, what I'm saying is I'm not going to be a mayor like government jobs, but it is a significant step that we must take, and it is the biggest step that we have taken, will have taken in our city since the Mayor and Barry's Summer Youth Leadership Program.
Okay. So crime seems to be a theme tonight. It's the number one concern of residents. Too many guns on the street, which leads to crime. Lack of police officers in communities, which can lead to crime. Once, when I was covering DC Police for the Post, then Chief Kathy Lanier said to me, she told me that her job was to make people feel like they live in a safe community. It's really the perception, right? If the numbers are low, you feel safe. But police statistics show that robberies are up 55% from this time last year, and burglaries are up 31%. What is your plan to cut crime in the district?
Well, first and foremost, let me say this. I want to center this well, because this is a city of people who feel unsafe. I know what that feels like because I grew up here in the 80s and 90s. I saw my first drive-by, my first dead body when I was 9 years old, playing at Upshur Playground. Now I'm a dad of a 5-year-old daughter named Madison and a 3-year-old named Monroe. And 3 weeks ago, someone pulled a gun on someone directly in front of my 3-year-old's daycare on Kennedy Street. And that was not the first time that happened in recent months. There are shootings on that corridor all the time. There are shootings across our city all the time, every day, and people are afraid. Violent crime and homicides have gone up for the past 5 years, and we are still a city without a plan. We need a mayor who has a plan. I have developed a plan, Cheryl, and I didn't develop it in a back room. I work with the foremost experts in the country. I work with federal and local prosecutors, with retired police officers, with academics, with returning citizens, and community members. So first and foremost, I have a plan. Police are part of our public safety plan. What I will do there is streamline police responsibilities, because right now we're asking police to do everything. We want them to keep us safe, but we also want them to respond to noise complaints and mental health concerns. They have exclusive jurisdiction over traffic stops. Well, we need our public safety officers to be focused on public safety, so I'm going to streamline their work. I'm also going to make sure that we are closing more cases. Right now, the mayor is pointing her fingers at everybody else for the increase in crime. She's saying the federal prosecutors aren't prosecuting, the Office of the Attorney General isn't prosecuting, the courts aren't hearing cases. Well, here's the reality. I talk to the federal and local prosecutors. They tell me they prosecute every single case that they can win. When they don't prosecute, it's because there's a problem with the arrest or the evidence. And I say a good mayor works with them on a routine basis to understand what cases get dropped and why, so that we continually get better. But we also need to stop crimes from happening. By the time the police show up and that yellow tape goes up, it is too late. We have lost a person, a child, a mother, a brother, a father, and it is too late. We need to be focused on preventing crime. First and foremost, people with good jobs are rarely committing violent crimes. That is why I started by focusing on work. People with good education are rarely committing violent crimes. That's why I focus so much on education. But we also have to do a lot more on violence prevention. There are a small number of people committing the vast majority of violent crimes in our city. We can and we must identify them, get to them with a clear alternative. On one side, we will get you any and every support that will get you off the path of crime, whether it be assistance with jobs, with housing, with mental health, addiction, whatever it is in our best interest to address that. Now, if they still decide to engage in violence, then there must be accountability, and accountability will be swift and it will be serious. But we have got to prevent crime. The other thing we have to do is protect people who have become victims of crime. There's a good book written by a local Washington Post reporter, John Woodrow Cox. It's called Children Under Fire, and it discusses the impact that violent crime has on young people and uses some DC examples. Now, young people across our city, particularly in wards 5, 7, and 8, are seeing violence and despair in their communities and are living with these untreated traumas, and that too is perpetuating violence. So we have got to be better about getting resources before crimes happen and after crime happens. We need a mayor who understands that police are part of our public safety equation, but police alone are not a public safety strategy.
So the mayor, as you know, has the right to appoint the police chief. Mm-hmm. If you're mayor, will you stick with the current one?
My philosophy on public safety is very clear. And whether it's the police chief or anybody else heading an agency, if they do not agree with my philosophy, then they're going to have to go. If they can execute this philosophy, then they can stay. but they have got to understand that execution and accountability is a key component of this administration. It is time for our government to level up in a way that we have not in decades. That means we need the best and brightest heading every single one of our agencies. So the police chief and every other city agency head is going to work for me, and they're going to execute the plan that I bring, because the voters want to see something different. And if these agency directors, including the chief, can bring something different, then they have a chance to stay. But if they can't, they're gone.
So let's talk about housing, because I know that's a big issue for you. The district, like many other metropolitan areas in the country, is struggling to create affordable, moderate income housing. Last summer, you co-introduced legislation known as the GAIN Act, which calls for DC to pay housing providers to convert existing rental units into affordable ones.
Yeah.
You said that this model will allow local government officials to step up affordable housing efforts in more neighborhoods. The measure passed. You called it a win-win. How many units have actually been converted to affordable ones?
Great question, Cheryl. So, I know people see me, I'm a council member and a lawyer, I'm in a suit. What people have to understand is that the work that I do here is very real and personal to me. In the front row is my dad. My dad is one of the proudest Washingtonians you will ever meet. But my dad doesn't live in DC because he can't afford it. Along with most of the rest of my family that's been priced out of the city in the past 20 years. These are people who belong here, who should be able to stay here. And so when I think about the issue of affordable housing, I think about my family, and I think about the other families that no longer can afford to live here. That is why, as a council member, I've taken such an aggressive and thoughtful approach to how we build more housing, because we are too far behind here. The GAIN Act is a bill that I wrote. It allows us to create housing, affordable housing, more quickly than any other tool that we have in our arsenal, because existing housing is cheaper to acquire, and we can, and quicker. It is cheaper and quicker. Unfortunately, while the city council can appropriate money and I can write bills, I do not manage the government yet. And so execution is where we fall short in this issue, and housing issues across the board, and in almost every other city service. Our city services have taken a decline. Now our agencies are not working the way they need to. I can keep passing good bills, but if we don't have a mayor who can implement, then it is a lost cause.
So have there been any units converted?
There have not been any units converted. That is a sad reality. That is what happens when we don't have an executive who can execute. We've brought this idea to them. The idea of converting, and the first idea, housing idea that I brought to the council, was converting older office buildings that are unoccupied into affordable and workforce housing. The mayor poo-pooed that idea, said it's ridiculous, it won't work. They sunk the study. Well, as soon as the pandemic hit and they saw the vacancy in our office buildings rise, the mayor comes out and says, I have a great housing plan. We should convert office buildings into housing. I'm saying, Mayor, we could have done that 5 years ago. We need to get ahead of these things. We need a mayor who is visionary, who is a problem solver, but also somebody who is an executive. Right now, our city is so occupied with politics. My tax dollars, your tax dollars are being used to make shirts to campaign green, to put out mailers that look like campaign mailers, but they're paid for by government resources. That is the focus of our government right now. It is not okay, because people in our city are suffering. They need a mayor who is serious about policy, who is serious about people, and who is committed to leveling up our government. Right now, we have too many political cronies running agencies, people playing double and triple duty, not able to execute. We need a mayor who can execute. That is what I'm going to do as mayor. I want people to hold me accountable. I want you to see the difference in government on day one, when we start focusing more on people and communities and less on politics and patronage.
So that was from Dad. There.
Dad got my back.
So you talk about, so this was your baby though, right? This was your idea. This is what you wanted to do. How have you followed up with the mayor? Once you saw over the last year that she allegedly was not doing anything and nothing's been converted, how did you follow up with her?
So we actually got this passed in the budget. So this would have been October of last year that we got it. We have hounded and hounded and hounded the deputy mayor for planning and economic development, stonewalled at every turn. What you need to understand, Cheryl, and what people in this city need to understand, this ain't unique to me. This is a mayor who does not work with the council, who doesn't work with commissioners, who doesn't work with the State Board of Education. That is how you don't solve problems. Like, we need a mayor who understands that we only solve these complex problems if we work together. That is important. When we talk about a city that operates efficiently, we need a mayor who understands that we need other people at the table in order to solve these problems. So I promise you, it's not for lack of trying, but I also tell you, this is not a unique thing, unfortunately. A lot of good bills and good ideas die in this administration because this is not an implementing administration. This is a ribbon cutting, slogan, hashtag having administration, and we need a serious mayor.
So what was the goal in terms of how many housing owners would participate?
As many as possible. So this was set up to be a pilot project to show that this idea could work. And how it should have operated is that we should have pulled together a board of property owners and housing advocates.
A commission, right? There was affordability commission.
There it is. A commission who would do two things. One, actively sort of solicit apartment building owners to participate in this project, but also put out an RFP. And so we had a two-pronged approach. The program has been botched, but it is still a good and workable program, but it's going to require a different leader to implement.
Has the commission ever been created?
The commission has not been created. The mayor does not support the commission. So look. Yeah.
So I'm sort of curious, and forgive me, I don't live in the district, but legislation was passed.
Mm-hmm.
So then it just dies somewhere along the line. I mean, I can understand a bill dying in committee, mm-hmm. but I don't understand.
Yeah.
Help me understand, like, why nothing's been done.
I wish we could all understand it, but this is not unique. Before I got to the council saw inequity in the classroom, inequity in education, and they determined that students who are at risk need more resources in order to help them catch up. So they passed a bill that required that students who are determined to have higher risks would get more funding. This was some 15 years ago almost, and to this day, Cheryl, despite hearings, despite Washington Post articles, despite everything under the sun, the administration still does not get the at-risk funding to the students who need it. That funding goes to fill basic needs in our classroom. So when I tell you this is not a problem unique to the GAIN Act or unique to Councilmember Robert White, this is widespread incompetence in our government, that's exactly what it is.
So let's fast forward to you maybe being elected mayor. How would you ensure the residents have more accessibility to affordable housing?
Well, I'm going to use, there's only one seat in this city powerful enough to set the vision and say to developers, you are welcome to develop housing here, but you are no longer welcome to develop the housing that you want that is best for your bottom line. What you need to develop is the housing that we need. We need affordable housing. We need workforce housing, and we need multi-bedroom housing. We need a mayor who will make that clear. This mayor won't do it. I will do it on day one. I'm also going to take innovative approaches, as I have done. The Office to Residential Conversion, we're going to execute that. The GAIN Act, creating housing affordability covenants, we're going to execute that. So as mayor, I'm going to execute, but I'm going to set a very clear standard. This is not just a city for elite people. This is a city for everyday people, for the people who make our city run. And we need a mayor who prioritizes those folks who have been left behind for too long.
Thank you. Time is up.
Is that
Thank
it?
you. I know, right? You probably don't want to stay longer. Thank you. Thank you.
But the sad reality is most of us didn't make it. In my short 37 years, I've buried 242 people due to gun violence in D.C. And as a result, I know that we have to do better as a city that has almost $20 billion budget. And I think that everything rises and falls on leadership. And so I feel like if we want to make our city better, first we got to make ourselves better. And I don't believe a mayor or a council member in itself is a solution to addressing all issues in our city. It's a us problem, not just a you or I problem. And so I'm running for mayor for DC to ensure that we have equity. And that means not equality, but to make sure that those who have the least get more and those who have more get less. And I'm unapologetic about that because I know growing up in Ward 8,
until the force is at 4,000 sworn officers. If you become mayor, would you support the hiring of hundreds of officers?
So
next year?
You said?
Would you support the hiring of hundreds of officers next year?
So I believe that public safety is not an issue just with police officers, right? I know that in Washington, D.C., when crime was at its highest, we had 5,000 officers and was considered the murder capital of the United States of America. And I know that over-policing and mass incarceration has crippled the black community. In fact, we've never fully recovered from the crack epidemic that crippled our communities in the district. And I believe in a public health approach to public safety, meaning that we have to put more money in prevention. We got to put more money in education, substance abuse, mental health services, and also policing. When I go to crime scenes, I probably go to more crime scenes than most people. And when I'm there, the police is there. I'm there, but I don't see any mental health services providers there. I don't see anybody working with the kids. I just seen somebody get shot or stabbed or whatever. And I think that we definitely have to have police in our community, but police is a reactionary part of the government that reacts when they get a call. And so we have to be more proactive than reactive and ensure we have a holistic approach to addressing public safety. So, and answering the question, I have to analyze the numbers and figure out what the need is, because I hear the mayor saying that now, but I remember being in a hearing just 3 years ago when we couldn't even get 50 officers uploaded into the police force. And so let alone 350, I'm not even sure it's reality, but it's an election season, so you know how it goes.
Like many cities, DC has seen a drop in the homeless population. It's still, up there, but there's a drop, with a steep drop actually in family homelessness. But a recent report from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development found that 86% of the homeless in DC are black. And as mayor, what would you do to eliminate homelessness in the nation's capital?
Thank you. I don't believe that notion that we have lost a significant, homelessness has went down significantly in the district. I've seen an administration that have displaced homeless people. How ironic is that? And so when you see families being kicked out of their tents and paperwork's destroyed, and then there are laws created that's initiated by the mayor that says that you have to have a certain amount of paperwork to even get homeless services, people are even left deeper in poverty. I was watching the news last year, and a guy was on the news, and he was crying. And he said, you people have keys and a bed. He said, the little that I do have, you all threw it away. And that hurt my heart, because that's not God. And I think that we have to address the core issues of our community. People who are homeless have a lot of similar issues around health disparities, because homelessness is not just a homeless crisis, it's also health implications being outside and those elements. Poverty. I think we have to address as early as middle school. Part of my education plan is to make sure we're not just teaching young people how to take a test. Because those who do well taking tests go on to college, do well, but those who don't get in what we call the school to prison pipeline. And so we have to intervene in that to
What's
make
it
sure.
called? What would you say it's called?
School to prison pipeline.
Oh, school to prison pipeline.
Yes, ma'am. And so we have to address, we want our kids to go to college, most definitely, but we also got to put our kids on the college track and an entrepreneurship track to ensure they have options and track them throughout their years to ensure success. We're in Washington, D.C. We have a plethora of careers. In fact, we are the second most degreed city in the nation. And so we have to ensure that we can create opportunities for our families, because what happens is that when you get a poor education, you go to a poor performing school, you get a poor paying job, you get poor housing, and you have kids in that same poor community. And so we have to break that cycle as early as middle school and provide wraparound service for parents and our communities to ensure that we don't repeat this poverty cycle, this cycle of poverty that's perpetuating the homeless crisis in D.C. And we have to admit we have one. See, what happens in D.C. is we don't put a lot of time admitting our problems. And when you don't talk about the problems, you can't have a solution. And then we have to start with addressing the problems and figure out what the needs are for our residents of D.C.
So who are some of the people you would bring to the table to solve some of these problems?
We have a plethora of homeless experts in D.C. We have to bring people who currently are homeless or came out of homelessness, and people who are homeowners to add value to the conversation. We have a lot of think tanks and nonprofits in this region that are national organizations that give us a lot of information. But the reality is not just having the information. It's about doing what's right with the information and putting our money where our mouth is. I believe that we have a budget that has grown, $5 billion in the last 5 years, but you don't see that reflecting the lives of everyday people in the district. And I hear it every day I walk down the street. In fact, I went to the Mayoral school today, and the residents are complaining about a basketball court with cracks in the ground and a school that has been closed for over 20 years, and saying they just need a recreation center in their community. There's no way we're crying about a recreation center with a government that's grown not $100 million, not $200 million, but $5 billion in the last 5 years.
Right, because isn't the proposed budget like 19.5
yep,
billion?
Almost $20 billion.
And so how would you reallocate that money? What
I begin to do is go on a listening tour throughout the district. Being a council member is a tough job. And for some, people think that we have all the answers, but we don't. And we have to make decisions about education, health, roads, you name it. And so what we have to do is find those experts and lay people who are in the fields, that they are the real experts. And so from that, I put together a plan, a comprehensive plan to address the hardcore issues of our city that incorporates public safety. I heard you talking about public safety. And I think that I was one of the first ones to support returning citizens being employed by the district to become what is now popular called violence interrupters and credible messengers. You know what they used to call them before they got funded? The news, no pun to the media.
None taken.
Okay, there we go.
I'm used to it.
The news was saying that D.C. is paying returning citizens not to commit crimes. And as a result, our current mayor never funded the NEAR Act to ensure that we can empower people within their communities to police their own communities.
Let me talk about that a little more.
Yeah.
Talk about that. Explain.
Okay. So Councilmember King McDuffie introduced a bill called the NEAR Act. That's a public health approach to addressing public safety that talked about jobs, it talked about wraparound services, mental health approach, mentoring, tutoring in different areas. And part of the plan was funded. But when I got in office, there was $0 in the budget to address public safety. You know why? Because the narrative that our current mayor was running was that crime was down. And when we hear the word crime is down, we say, yeah, it is down. Down the street, around the corner, in our community, in our neighborhoods. And as a result, we've neglected that for so long that we're in a place we are now where we're saying, I've never seen this many kids and women killed in our community, ever. Even when we was in the 80s and 90s.
What's going on? And how do you fix it as mayor? How do you fix it?
So it's a we approach. I believe there are individuals, experts in the community that know what's happening before it gets to the level of a shooting and a stabbing. In fact, I see Dimitri in the back. He's a violence interrupter in the 30th Street community. And I know that he's from that community, he came up in that community, and he may have done some trouble or done some wrong in that community. And he has relationships in that community. So we have to help those who are in the community to change their lives and ultimately give back. And then we have to provide the expertise through clinical therapists to address the trauma, We have to get those individuals inside the schools, and we have to get people on the path to employment. We have a program in Ward 8 called the Hope Project. This gentleman, Ray Bell, is taking people with records, with $120,000 a year. Guess what? Those people not in the alley robbing people, not stealing cars, chasing people down the street, not committing these acts of violence, because we got to be intentional about helping those individuals who need us the most, and not just those that we know that are going to do well. And this information comes to me because I put together a plan in 2006 before I got in office. And I remember every last council member except one to make sure we had the money in the budget to address violence prevention. The first year we got $750, then we're up to $18 million to address violence prevention in Washington, D.C.
And so how's the money being spent?
In a plethora of ways. We have what is now called the ONE's Office, the Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement. We have what is called the Building Blocks Initiative. We have violence interrupters, credible messengers, and it may sound like a great number, $18 million, but it's still a drop in the bucket when we are witnessing the violent shooting that happened on Wisconsin Avenue, or Nia Courtney, who was killed on MLK, or Davon McNeil, whose 11-year-old boy killed Cedar Garden. We see this narrative happening every day, but we are late in addressing it. We are putting a Band-Aid on a bullet wound and saying we're addressing public safety when we're really not.
Okay. So you talk about disparities in healthcare, homelessness, crime, all things that matter in this city and certainly in your ward. So if the Republicans take back control of Congress during the midterms, which some people think they may do, how will you, if you're elected, defend the district regarding gun laws and homelessness and all the things, statehood, that matter to D.C.?
So I've been in the trenches defending the district prior to becoming a council member. We have to fight to ensure we keep Democrats in office first and foremost, but all politics are local, and we have to show that we are redirecting our highest risk individuals in the district to put something else on their minds. And I think that we haven't historically really put the resources there. I say that because when I graduated from Bellew Senior High School, we had 97 people to graduate, and I looked at where we are in our 10-year reunion. We had 20 years today. Don't tell nobody. And I look around at
I got shoes older than you.
There. And I look around at some of my peers, and I see those individuals who were brighter than me, smarter than me, that just fell through the cracks because we didn't put systems in place to help them get to the next level. And I have a brother who just came home from jail last Wednesday, who graduated from Norfolk State University, who got caught up doing some wrong things. And I started to think to myself, what could we have done differently for him and individuals like him to stay on the right path? And I think that some people have a lot of entrepreneurship ability, but because they are unable to get loans or access to money to start their business and capital, they fall by the wayside. And so as a result, I'm the council member now. I put money in the budget, what is now called the Dream Grant, to put local dollars into small organizations to spur entrepreneurship in the district. I saw the problem of grandmothers raising their grandkids. I put money in the budget to have Grandparents Caregivers Act to ensure that families are able to keep family members in their home if they're not directly their child. And so I'm just not talking about the problem. As a council member, each and every day I've been working on solutions in the district. And you can check my track record. I've been in the trenches for over 19 years doing this work, and I'll continue to do this if I wasn't a council member to ensure we can fight for equity and inclusion in this $20 billion budget.
Congress can be a tough cookie, right? So how do you allegedly you said? So how would you continue to fight? So
first, we still continue to fight our own statehood, right? I think it's very important that we empower our local leaders to have a vote in Congress. We have a fierce leader, Congresswoman Ellen Holmes Norton, who's fighting up there. We have some shadow representatives, but the reality is that we still are a group of people that's marginalized and don't have a vote in Congress. And so that's first and foremost. And I think that we have to take our fight. We have advantage, right? Because we have our local government and our federal government right down the street. And I don't think we do enough advocacy on a federal level to get what we need in our city. I watch a lot of policies being affected across the world. And I think that while we in the nation's capital, most powerful place in D.C., but when I was riding here, and I saw people jogging by the monument, and I started to think about the transition of what I saw coming from Ward 8, coming down here. And my job is to make sure that the same amenities and equity that we have west of the river, we have east of the river, and vice versa. And my fight is not even with Congress. My fight is the mindset with our own people, right? Because we can change the laws or have 100 police on the corner. And even in I don't know if you know about the girl, Nia Courtney, who was a young girl, 6 years old, who got killed. If you look at the video, it was a police sitting right there in the corner of the video the whole time the shooting happened. So it's not even really about the police responding. It's about helping people change their mentality and vision of who they are. Because when you know who you really are, you're not going to come down the community with an AK-47 shooting innocent people in the community.
Okay. I want to give you your full time. You've got 58 seconds, so I have other questions. One is it's been 15 years since DCPS went under mayoral control. Mm-hmm. Schools have made some gains, but it's still not good. Students are graduating without being able to read. Yeah. Black students still lag behind white students in terms of testing. If elected mayor, what's your plan to fix the school system?
First, education comes from the word educados or educo, so to bring forth or to bring out. As a graduate of DC Public Schools, I've noticed that even going to the schools, I run a Ward 8 Youth Leadership Academy. And when I go to the schools to recruit kids to be in my program, they give me the top kids. And so we accept them too because we want those to thrive, but we're looking for the ones who are having challenges. And I think that we have to create a safe space where we address the whole child. That means left brain thinkers versus right brain thinkers. And what I know, what I've seen in our schools is that we are not putting the resources in place to deal with the health disparities. We know that if a child is hungry in the morning, he or she is not performing at his maximum capacity because he or she is hungry. At the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy of needs is public safety. And a lot of our students don't feel safe. Ray Grant and I were talking in the back about a young lady who was struggling to do well in school, not because she didn't have the aptitude to do well on a test, because she was afraid. And we're not putting the systems and people in place to address these things. We're just teaching kids how to take a test. And teachers are frustrated, depressed, because those impact scores and afraid for their job because they're pushing kids how to do well on the test when we have so much to offer, like home economics, wood shop, which we had in my school that was taken out. And under my leadership, we're going to show we put more hands-on, career-based and entrepreneurship back into the school to ensure we address the whole child, not just teaching kids how to take a test.
They still teach home economics?
No.
Oh, okay. I was like, what?
They need
to. Okay. On that note, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And at 19, again, I stopped working at the Department of Recreation, and my entertainment career took off. It's duly noted. You can Google it. But that's only 10% of my life. The other 90%, I'm a philanthropist, humanitarian, and entrepreneur. As executive, Viacom entrusted me to employ thousands of people, work with millions of dollars in budgets, and make 25 different television shows from behind the camera. My career and experiences have taken me different places. Unlike the party line politics that's going on here in DC, I'm running as an independent. I think that's super important for me to let people know. It's super important that people keep their parties, but keep their thoughts independent. Thank you so much.
You've said that if you're elected, you want the police leadership to train police officers to be more
Powerful, but right now it's super dangerous. It's 25% less safe to live in this city than it was 10 years ago. That's true. And we have to get it under control now, and we have to take it super serious as people and come together as a community. And if we don't, we're going to deal with the same problems for the next 4 years, and the next 4 years, and the next 4 years. So I'm telling people, let's come together, let's love one another, and let's keep our city safe together.
You know, I don't think there's anybody here who's been on this stage tonight who would disagree that crime's an issue. It's an issue in this. But what's the solution? I mean, really, crime has been an issue in this city for decades.
Yes, ma'am. Well, you know, it was lower crime. You know, it's levels of crime. I have programs, and everybody who knows me knows that I think programming will help the problem. My program, Don't Shoot Guns, Shoot Cameras, are helping kids learn about filmmaking and use their intellect and their creativity. And we have to get to these kids early. My programs like Beyond Your Block is creating opportunities for kids to go. We took 60 kids to the Audi Stadium last week. We took kids to the White House. And I think getting our youth out of their environment, that's what helped me. You know, getting Rodney Red Grant out of that environment taught me different things, different cultures. And we have to take this serious. We can't be a split city where kids from Ward 8 never go to Ward 1, you know, never leave their block at all. This is a serious situation. And I think you have to have programming in the schools. attorney generals not getting along with mayors. We have city council members not getting along with the mayors. The mayor's not getting along with the city council. We have ANCs that's not getting along with this person and that person. And our kids in our community look up to all of this and to say, if they can't get along, why should we get along? So we have to do better as leaders and executives. And the media. That's right. And what he said. And we have to do that. We have to really do that. And I know as a mayor, I think that you have a position to be able to bring people together.
So in addition to crime issues, among other things, the district suffers from significant health disparities.
Yes, ma'am.
With access to care distinctly worse, of course, among the city's lower income people of color.
Yes, ma'am.
The problem has been made worse by the pandemic.
Yes, ma'am.
So what's your solution as mayor to reduce these disparities?
Well, the pandemic was terrible for all of us. My father caught COVID, put him in the hospital for 2 months, broke him down from 183 to 123. When he finally got out the hospital, he was weaker than any time I've ever seen him. He couldn't hold his head up. He couldn't walk anymore. He couldn't change himself. He couldn't get to the restroom. And COVID really destroyed a lot of people's families, a lot of lives. Thank God my father is still alive. He's still weak. He's still dealing with lung issues. But COVID destroyed a lot of our city, especially in certain wards, because they didn't have health care. And health care is super important for all of our city. And we have to take it serious about our city having health care, especially our low-income families that don't have any health care. And we have to do it now. And we have to build hospitals. You know, Ward 8, even though they're building a hospital right now, we should have been built a hospital. It's the biggest crime area, the most urgent crime area, and there's more shootings going on and more trauma going over there. They should have been had a hospital, you know? And that's ridiculous to me.
And that hospital is due to open in 2024, is it?
And that's what they say.
But as mayor, you can make it happen.
I can make it happen, yeah. I mean, you know, people put things on a book all the time here in Washington, D.C., but we got to make them stick to their plan. That's why affordable housing is where it's at. You know, we're not making people stick to the plan. You know, we have real people, even in this audience, like my brother Malcolm, they really build affordable housing units. But they're not getting the money that they deserve to build these units. You know, we got to really focus in on what's the main problem. You know, people want to say it's gentrification and it's all that. No, God has made all of us come to a point to live with one another. But we don't have to push people out just to have our own way. We got to check the MFI, the median family incomes. You know, we can't compare that to Loudoun County and Howard County and Montgomery County, because people in the city don't make that type of money sometimes in certain wards. And we got to really look at that MFI and build upon it and make it a reality and make it real so people can afford to live here. And we got to put pressure on these banks that fund these developers and make them put people that they save. They say you're going to put 20% affordable housing in the units and you're only putting 2%. We got to put pressure on them. We got to penalize these individuals who break the rules that come to Washington, D.C. probably about 5% of the violent prevention programs. It's probably 80 or 90 different violent prevention programs in the city that are not getting money. And if we fund these programs, let's make them give stipends to our youth. You know, let our youth, because that's what the problem is. Our youth are not making any money, so now they're going out and robbing, they're going out to stealing, they're going out to try to get money. Let's put programs that are funded by us, that they give them stipends, and they living a little better. You know, that Murray & Berry money took me a long way. I don't know about you guys, if you ever. I know, 1 second.
And I have one last question.
Okay.
You can either go on or you won't.
No, it took me a long way. It took me, the summer before I worked at Murray & Berry's summer youth program, I had no clothes. My mother was working 3 jobs, taking care of 2 kids. And when I got that job, I was able to buy my own school clothes, give my mother money for the electricity, and build wealth within my community and help her.
One last quick question. The district has a $17.5 billion budget this year and a proposed $19 billion one for the next fiscal year. What's your experience working with large budgets?
Oh, I mean,
it's a nice transition from, you know, your credit history to dealing with budgets.
No, I've dealt with, Viacom employed me to produce 25 successful shows, you know, allocate millions of dollars in budgets. And those situations I still do to this day. 6 companies right now, from my Red Grant Enterprises to my Art Grant Inc. to my Red Grant Creative, writing for some of the biggest celebrities in the world. And I've been able to really tuck my money really good. You know, I tell people, you can Google my net worth. It ain't the best, and they might lie, but you know, you'll see how I've been managing money.